Listen closely, because I'm going to talk to you the way no one else ever has. What I'm about to walk you through isn't feel-good motivation, and it's not the kind of watered-down advice adults throw at you because they don't know anything better. What I'm about to give you is the kind of insight that permanently rewires how you look at every conversation, every relationship, every choice, and every person in your life. And once you understand it, you can't unsee it. The world you thought you lived in changes. The rules you thought everyone followed reveal themselves as illusions. And here's the wild part. Your father didn't give you this. Your teachers didn't give you this. Most men live their entire lives, go through their entire careers, raise children, pay taxes, stress themselves into the grave. And they never learn any of this. They never discover the operating system running underneath every human interaction. They never learn the coding language of power, perception, loyalty, reputation, or influence. They don't learn it because nobody taught them, and because society quietly discourages anyone from learning it at all. 5 centuries ago, a man named Machiavelli wrote down the most brutally honest truths about human nature ever put on paper. They were so uncomfortable that the Catholic Church tried to bury his work. Politicians publicly condemned him while privately studying him. Kings used his insights to rule empires. Today, CEOs, presidents, generals, and anyone who understands high-level strategy still go back to his ideas, but only behind closed doors. Because Machiavelli didn't describe how humans should behave. He described how humans do behave, not the fantasy version. Not the good citizen version, the real version. So why didn't your father teach you these things? The answer is simple. Nobody taught him. And the culture you grew up in trained him to think that talking about power makes someone manipulative, immoral, or dangerous. As if choosing to stay clueless is somehow more noble. As if closing your eyes to how people actually behave protects you. It doesn't. It makes you vulnerable. Ignorance isn't purity. Ignorance is weakness. And today we're tearing that weakness out of you. Let's start with the first truth, one your father probably never even considered. Human beings are not logical creatures. They are not walking calculators searching for the smartest choice. Machiavelli said, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel." Meaning, people make decisions based on how things look, not how things are. They'll choose what's comfortable over what's correct, what feels good over what's good for them. And you can watch this play out everywhere. Your friend who begs for dating advice but keeps choosing the same disasters because it's easier than changing himself. Your coworker complaining about being broke but dropping $10 a day at Starbucks. The woman who says she wants kindness and stability, yet consistently chooses chaos and drama. These contradictions don't happen because humans are stupid. They happen because humans are emotional first and rational second. Emotion is the engine. Logic is the decoration. So what does that mean for you? It means stop trying to convince people with facts. Facts rarely change minds. Feelings do. If you want someone to follow you, agree with you, support you, choose you, you don't appeal to their reasoning. You appeal to their self-image, their pride, their desire for status, their fear of discomfort, their need for validation. You show them a version of themselves they want to believe in. Men who understand this control rooms without raising their voices. They win negotiations without arguments. They attract loyalty without begging for it. They influence people effortlessly because they're speaking the language human beings actually respond to. Now let's move into the next truth. One your father probably repeated without thinking. Loyalty is everything. You've heard that phrase your whole life. Be loyal to your friends. Be loyal to your company. Be loyal to your partner. Loyalty as a virtue. Loyalty as a badge of honor. But Machiavelli saw something different. He saw that loyalty without reciprocity isn't loyalty, it's exploitation. He famously said, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." People love you when you provide them comfort. People fear losing you when you provide them value. And guess which one keeps them loyal when things get difficult? Look at the most successful men you know. They aren't blindly loyal. They aren't the ones who stick around after being disrespected, undervalued, or ignored. They're loyal strategically. They give loyalty when loyalty is returned. But the moment someone breaks that mutual agreement, they walk away without hesitation. Think about that friend who only calls you when he needs something. Think about that employer preaching, "We're a family," while laying people off by email. Think about that woman expecting your commitment while secretly keeping options open. None of that is loyalty. And Machiavelli would call you a fool for giving to people who don't give back. Here's the shift. Be generous with loyalty, but ruthless about removing it. Loyalty becomes powerful when it is earned. Loyalty becomes dangerous when it is assumed. A man who keeps giving loyalty to someone who doesn't reciprocate isn't noble, he's naive. And naive men get used. Now let's talk about reputation. Something society pretends doesn't matter, even though reputation shapes your opportunities, your relationships, your career, and the level of respect you receive from the world. Your father probably told you, "Just be yourself and people will understand you." But that's not how reality works. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." In other words, authenticity isn't about revealing everything. Authenticity is about choosing what you reveal deliberately and intentionally. Weak men overshare. Powerful men curate. The guy who complains about being misunderstood doesn't have a perception problem. He has a reputation problem. He thinks the world owes him understanding. It doesn't. Want to be seen as competent? Stop complaining and start offering solutions. Want to be seen as valuable? Don't be available every hour of the day. Scarcity makes diamonds valuable, not abundance. Want to project power? Stop explaining your decisions to people who have no influence on your life. A strong reputation is built on consistency, mystery, and selective vulnerability. The version of you that the world sees should be the version that serves your goals, not the version that spills out when you're emotional. Let's move into the next lesson, one your father probably avoided because he wanted life to feel peaceful, predictable, simple. He probably taught you to avoid conflict, to get along with everyone, to let things slide, to keep the peace. But Machiavelli saw the world differently. He wrote, "There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others." Now, that sounds dramatic if you take it literally, but you're not supposed to. Machiavelli wasn't talking only about armies. He was talking about life. Conflict isn't something rare. It's not something that occasionally appears. Conflict is always happening around you, silent, subtle, invisible, constant. Someone is always trying to move ahead. Someone is always competing for a position. Someone is always testing boundaries, whether intentionally or unconsciously. The only question is whether you're aware of it or not. The men who succeed aren't the ones starting fights. They're the ones who are never surprised by them. This is one of the biggest differences between average men and powerful men. Preparation. Powerful men train during peace. Weak men wait until the problem hits, and by then, it's too late. Think about your career. Someone wants your spot. Someone wants your recognition. Someone resents your progress. And someone else is quietly waiting for you to slip so they can move ahead. Think about your relationships. There's always another man willing to take your place if you stop showing up as the man you should be. Think about social circles. People constantly test you, not because they're evil, but because humans instinctively compete for hierarchy. It's biology. Most men are caught off guard because they believe the lie. If I avoid conflict, conflict won't come to me. But Machiavelli knew the truth. Avoiding conflict doesn't make you safe. It makes you unprepared. So, what does preparation look like? You build your skills when you don't need them. You stack your money when your income is good. You network when you don't need favors. You stay in shape before anyone threatens you. You work on your mindset while life is calm, not when it's falling apart. Because here's the twist. The man who is ready for conflict almost never faces it. People feel when someone is not to be messed with. They can sense readiness the way animals sense strength in the wild. Humans are no different. Machiavelli explained it clearly. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. Meaning, you must be both cunning and strong. You must recognize traps like a fox and intimidate threats like a lion. The combination makes you untouchable. Now we need to move into one of the most damaging lies men grow up believing. Just be nice. Your father said it. Teachers repeated it. Movies preach it. Society rewards it. But what does nice actually mean? To most people, being nice means avoiding discomfort, avoiding confrontation, avoiding difficult conversations, being agreeable even when you disagree, being pleasant even when you're disrespected. That's not morality. That's fear wearing a smile. Machiavelli drew a line between being nice and being good. Being good means doing what's right, protecting what matters, speaking truth even when it's uncomfortable, holding your standards and maintaining your boundaries. Being nice often means compromising all of that just to avoid tension. Look around at the real world. Women say they want a nice guy, but who do they chase? Who do they commit to? Who do they respect? Not the man who avoids conflict. Not the man who bends. Not the man who's agreeable to a fault. They go toward the man who has a backbone, clear standards, decisive energy, and controlled strength. Because deep down, they can feel the difference between kindness and weakness. Nice guys do what others want. Good men do what's necessary. Nice guys crave approval. Good men command respect. Nice guys avoid difficult truths. Good men speak them. Look at every powerful figure, CEOs, leaders, elite performers, champions. None of them are nice in the soft, people-pleasing sense. They're often fair. They're often generous. They often help others. But they do not bow. They do not diminish themselves. And they do not fear disappointing people who don't matter. Strength with kindness is admirable. Weakness wrapped in niceness is repulsive. Machiavelli hammered this point home. Humans are simple, and they react to immediate needs. A deceiver will always find victims. Translation: if you live your life avoiding discomfort, someone will always use that against you. Someone will always manipulate you. Someone will always take advantage of your softness. The solution isn't to become ruthless toward everyone. It's to become clear-eyed. To see how people really behave and respond with strength instead of naivety. Now let's tie these truths together. We've covered emotional decision-making, strategic loyalty, reputation control, the inevitability of conflict, and the difference between being good and being nice. These lessons aren't just standalone ideas. They form a complete framework for navigating human nature. Once you understand that humans are emotional, you stop wasting time arguing with logic. Once you understand that loyalty must be earned, you stop being exploited. Once you understand that reputation is strategic, you stop oversharing. Once you see conflict as constant, you stay prepared. And once you understand the difference between goodness and niceness, you stop betraying yourself. See what's happening here? You're waking up. You're stepping out of the role society assigned you and into the role Machiavelli reserved for the rare men who choose awareness over comfort. This isn't about becoming manipulative. It's about becoming unmovable. It's about understanding the game everyone else is secretly playing while pretending that no game exists. Average men cling to the illusion that life is fair, that people are rational, that loyalty is automatic, that conflict is rare, and that niceness will protect them. Powerful men see the world clearly. Machiavelli summarized it perfectly. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. You can strive for both, but if you must choose, choose the one that ensures you're never ignored. Because being ignored is the true opposite of power. You now have the foundation. You now have the lens through which the world becomes clearer. And once clarity comes, decisions become simpler. Boundaries sharpen. Relationships reorganize. People treat you differently. You carry yourself differently. Now that the foundation is set, we need to go deeper, because everything you've heard so far is only the surface-level shift. Once you begin to see human nature through Machiavelli's lens, the entire structure of your relationships, ambitions, and worldview begins to reorganize itself. Your interactions stop being random. Your decisions stop being emotional. Your identity stops being shaped by other people's expectations. Let's return to something we touched on earlier. Perception. Machiavelli said that the majority of people only see what you appear to be, not who you are on the inside. And most men misunderstand this because they think authenticity means full transparency. They think being real means exposing everything, every insecurity, every doubt, every chaotic thought, every emotion. But that's not authenticity. That's emotional dumping. That's lack of control. Authenticity is about staying true to your principles, not broadcasting your vulnerabilities. When Machiavelli says to manage your appearance, he's not saying lie. He's saying lead. Present the version of yourself that aligns with your goals, because the world will treat you based on that version, not the one in your heart. And here's something most men never understand. Your external presence creates your opportunities. Think about the last time you met someone who spoke with calm confidence, someone who didn't rush their words, didn't over-explain, didn't fidget. Without even trying, that person created the impression of competence. They didn't need to prove anything. Their presence did the heavy lifting. Now think about someone who talks too much, reveals too much, justifies too much. You can feel a lack of power in them, even if they're smart or talented. Why? Because they're leaking information. They're showing all their cards. And Machiavelli knew, you cannot influence others when you have no mystery left. This isn't manipulation. This is discipline. This is emotional intelligence. This is strategy. Your father likely never taught you this because he was from a generation that believed blending in was safer than standing out, that avoiding attention was smarter than commanding respect. But in the real world, especially the modern world, people listen to those who control their presence. Now let's dive into boundaries, because they're a form of reputation and conflict management woven into one. Society teaches men that boundaries are rude or aggressive, that saying no is selfish, that prioritizing your time is arrogant. But this conditioning exists for a reason. Men with weak boundaries are easier to control. Machiavelli understood that if you allow people to take freely, they will never voluntarily stop. You have to define where the line is and enforce it, not with anger, not with hostility, but with clarity. Look at the strongest men you admire in your own life. They have a calm firmness to them. They don't yell. They don't curse. They don't shake. They simply say, "This is what I tolerate. This is what I don't." And people listen. Here's a truth. The first time you enforce a boundary, people get uncomfortable, not because you're wrong, but because they benefited from you having none. Once you start valuing yourself, you interrupt their convenience, which brings us to a deeper Machiavellian principle. Your value increases when you make yourself selective, not scarce in a desperate way, but selective in a strategic way. Stop giving your time to people who drain you. Stop giving your presence to people who don't respect it. Stop giving explanations to people who don't deserve them. Because here's what Machiavelli saw clearly. People respect what they cannot easily access. Think about luxury items. Think about VIP sections. Think about high-status leaders. Scarcity creates desire. Scarcity creates respect. And scarcity in your personal presence does the same. This doesn't mean you become cold to everyone. It means you stop being universally available. You give your time intentionally. You choose your inner circle carefully. You invest your energy where it produces growth, not stress. Now let's go deeper into the emotional mechanics behind all of these truths. Because Machiavelli wasn't just talking about politics. He was describing psychological patterns that continue to govern human behavior today. For example, let's revisit the idea that people are emotional first and rational second. This isn't an insult. This is biology. The human brain evolved for survival, not logical modeling. The emotional brain fires first. The rational brain fires next. So when you're trying to persuade someone, your partner, your boss, your friend, your audience, logic alone will never be enough. If you want to influence effectively, you need to understand what emotion drives the person in front of you. Is it pride? Is it fear? Is it insecurity? Is it validation? Is it status? Is it acceptance? Is it desire for comfort? Once you identify the emotional root, influence becomes natural, not manipulative natural, because you're finally speaking in the language people actually respond to. This is why arguing rarely changes minds. Why debates almost never convince the other side. Why facts bounce off people who don't want to hear them. They're not reacting to information. They're reacting to identity. And once someone believes something is part of who they are, it becomes almost impossible to change through logic alone. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology existed. He saw that if you want someone to take action, you must show them how the action aligns with their self-image. That's why persuasive leaders, speakers, and negotiators don't overwhelm people with facts. They inspire emotion first, then reinforce it with logic. Now, let's tackle a topic most men struggle with. Strength versus goodness. Machiavelli made a clear distinction, one that society still tries to blur. He argued that real goodness requires strength, because without strength, your goodness isn't a virtue, it's a vulnerability. It means you're kind because you're afraid of conflict. It means you're forgiving because you can't enforce consequences. It means you're agreeable because you fear rejection. That is not goodness, that is fear. Goodness that stems from strength is different. It's intentional, it's chosen, it's controlled. It's the lion lying down, not because he can't fight, but because he chooses not to. Weakness wears the mask of niceness. Strength wears the armor of principle. Women feel this difference. Men feel this difference. The world feels this difference. Nice men crumble when challenged. Good men stay firm. Nice men apologize for their standards. Good men uphold them. Nice men fear disappointing people. Good men fear betraying themselves. This difference determines how people treat you everywhere you go. So now we arrive at one of the most important Machiavellian principles that tie everything together. Clarity creates power. When you understand human nature, emotion, loyalty, boundaries, perception, conflict, you stop living reactively. You stop being surprised by people. You stop giving endless chances. You stop needing external approval. And for the first time, you begin to feel in control. You start to see reality as it is not as you wish it were. This is the turning point. This is where the transformation begins. Now that we've broken through the outer layers, it's time to go deeper into the psychological power structures Machiavelli wanted men to understand, but that most never do. Because when you truly grasp these ideas, everything about your social life, your relationships, your status, and your internal confidence begins to shift. You no longer see interactions as random. You stop taking things personally. You stop reacting emotionally. Instead, you start to operate from clarity, strategy, and strength. Let's return to the nature of conflict, because this is one of the most misunderstood aspects of human behavior. When Machiavelli said there is no avoiding war, he wasn't being dramatic, he was being realistic. He was pointing out that every environment contains competition, and every person is subconsciously testing where they stand. Even in friendships, people test boundaries. Even in workplaces, people compete for positions. Even in relationships, people test loyalty, consistency, confidence, and resilience. Conflict isn't something that begins when someone shouts. It begins silently. It begins with small shifts in tone, subtle disrespect, tiny power plays, changes in attention, or small reductions in effort. Most men never notice these early signals because they were raised to avoid conflict, not to understand it. But once you begin to read people clearly, you start to see conflict in its earliest form, before it becomes a problem. And that's where real power lies. A man who can sense tension early can redirect it calmly. A man who can feel the energy of disrespect before it's spoken can correct it gently. A man who recognizes competition in someone's eyes before it manifests into action is already ahead. You don't need to fight when you're aware. You don't need aggression when you have confidence. You don't need dominance when you have presence. This is why Machiavelli emphasized preparation. Conflict becomes dangerous only when you ignore it. Prepared men rarely fight because people feel that they're not an easy opponent. Now, let's dig deeper into loyalty, because this is one of the biggest reasons strong men fall. Society romanticizes loyalty as unconditional, noble, and absolute. But Machiavelli saw the truth. Loyalty without reciprocity is not loyalty. It is self-sabotage. Real loyalty is built on value, respect, and mutual benefit. The moment someone expects loyalty while giving nothing in return, the contract collapses. Think about how many men have ruined their lives by giving loyalty to the wrong people. Friends who disappear the moment trouble hits. Employers who replace them without hesitation. Partners who demand everything but offer little back. Machiavelli understood human nature well enough to know that people follow strength, not sentiment. They stay loyal when it benefits them, inspires them, or elevates them, not just because you're nice. You are not obligated to be loyal to someone who drains you. You are not obligated to be loyal to someone who lies. You are not obligated to be loyal to someone who only shows up when it's convenient. And you certainly are not obligated to be loyal to someone who consistently chooses themselves over you. A man who gives loyalty blindly is a man who will be taken advantage of repeatedly. This brings us to one of Machiavelli's most important insights. Value determines loyalty. When you elevate your life, your skills, your discipline, your confidence, people naturally become more loyal because being connected to you elevates them too. This isn't arrogance. This is reality. People gravitate toward those who carry strength, clarity, direction, and purpose. Now let's talk about something even deeper. The relationship between fear, respect, and influence. Machiavelli famously said it is safer to be feared than loved. And modern men often misunderstand this. Fear does not mean intimidation. It does not mean cruelty. It does not mean aggression. It means respect for your boundaries and consequences. People fear disappointing someone they admire. People fear losing access to someone valuable. People fear crossing someone who doesn't tolerate disrespect. People fear testing someone who clearly understands their own worth. This is not hostility. This is authority. And authority is earned through consistency. People respect men who say what they mean, follow through, don't explain themselves unnecessarily, don't go back on their word, don't tolerate disrespect, don't beg for approval, don't chase endlessly, don't collapse under pressure. These behaviors create a quiet fear, the healthy kind, the kind that tells people, I cannot treat him the way I treat others. This is the form of power Machiavelli was pointing to, not violence, not cruelty, standards, presence, stability, controlled strength. Now let's shift into one of the most critical pieces of the Machiavellian mindset. Self-perception creates external perception. If you see yourself as unworthy, others will too. If you see yourself as replaceable, others will treat you that way. If you see yourself as powerless, the world will confirm it. Humans are perception machines. People read your posture, your tone, your eye contact, your breathing, your decisiveness, your reactions. They build a complete identity for you based on the signals you give them. This is why Machiavelli emphasized crafting your appearance intentionally. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be the best. But you do need to be deliberate. Think about someone who walks into a room with slow, steady movements, calm energy, and relaxed confidence. You can feel something different about them before they speak a word. That is Machiavellian presence. Most men never develop this because they live from insecurity instead of strategy. They seek approval instead of respect. They earn attention instead of commanding it. They project nervousness instead of certainty. And people respond accordingly. Now let's move to something even more powerful. Principles over emotions. Machiavelli understood that emotions are part of human nature, but they must be controlled, not obeyed. The moment you start reacting emotionally, you lose the ability to influence outcomes. Think about the men you admire most. They're not emotionless. They're emotionally disciplined. They can feel anger without exploding. They can feel attraction without losing control. They can feel fear without freezing. They can feel disappointment without collapsing. Why? Because their principles are stronger than their impulses. This is the difference between a boy and a man. Boys chase feelings. Men follow standards. And when you hold on to principles, loyalty when earned, boundaries when necessary, preparation even in peace, controlled authenticity, selective presence, your entire world reorganizes around you. Relationships become clearer. Opportunities become more frequent. People treat you with more respect. Your decisions become cleaner, faster, calmer. Your identity becomes solid instead of shaky. This is the transformation Machiavelli wanted men to experience, not cruelty, not manipulation, but clarity. Clarity of mind, clarity of intention, clarity of action. You start to shift from reacting to life to shaping it. Now we reach the final layer of this transformation, the part Machiavelli understood, but almost no one teaches today. Because once you grasp these final principles, you stop navigating the world like someone hoping to be treated well, and start moving through it like someone who understands exactly how people think, act, choose, and respond. Let's return to the most fundamental truth we started with. Human beings are emotional creatures, not rational ones. The sooner you accept this, the easier life becomes. Most men suffer because they assume logic governs the world. They assume fairness matters. They assume people mean what they say, follow what they promise, and act in their own best interest. But Machiavelli saw the truth clearly 500 years ago. Humans act based on comfort, fear, pride, insecurity, attention, validation, convenience, and desire, long before they act based on reason. If you're trying to convince someone with facts, you're already losing. If you're trying to appeal to logic, you're missing the point. If you're expecting people to just do the right thing, you're living in a fantasy. Real influence comes from understanding what people feel, not what they should think. This is why people sabotage their own goals, why they choose toxic partners, why they stay in miserable jobs, why they chase short-term pleasure at the cost of long-term stability. Emotions run the show. Logic is the assistant. And once you understand this, you stop getting frustrated with people. You start understanding them. Now let's return to reputation, because your reputation determines how the world moves around you. Machiavelli said that everyone sees what you appear to be, and few truly understand who you are. That means the image you project is more important than the feelings you hold inside. The world doesn't reward hidden potential. It rewards visible presence. Reputation is built in silence, but revealed through consistency. If you show emotional stability, people trust you. If you show confidence, people follow you. If you show scarcity, people value you. If you show boundaries, people respect you. If you show strength, people don't test you the same way. This isn't about pretending. It's about choosing the version of yourself that aligns with your goals and then living that version consistently. The world does not adapt to your intentions. It adapts to your behaviors. Weak men reveal everything. Strong men reveal selectively. Powerful men reveal intentionally. Now let's revisit one of Machiavelli's most practical insights. Conflict cannot be avoided, only delayed. The truth is, the world tests you whether you're ready or not. If you're unprepared, the tests become painful. If you're prepared, the tests become opportunities. People test your patience. People test your boundaries. People test your confidence. People test your loyalty. People test your reactions. People test your resilience. But here's the secret. When you expect these tests, they lose their power. When you understand that humans naturally push for advantage, you stop feeling attacked. You start feeling prepared. Preparation turns conflict from something frightening into something simple. You don't need to fight. You don't need to react. You simply need to be ready. And readiness alone diffuses most threats. That's why Machiavelli emphasized being both the fox and the lion. The fox sees the traps. The lion frightens the wolves. When you combine awareness with strength, manipulation with clarity, intelligence with backbone, you become a man most people instinctively respect. Now we need to talk about something men almost never learn: the difference between being kind and being weak. Modern culture teaches men that niceness is a virtue, but niceness is often just fear covered in politeness. Nice men avoid conflict. Nice men avoid honesty. Nice men avoid anything that risks disapproval. And that's exactly why nice men finish last. They're not guiding their lives. They're reacting to everyone else's. Good men, on the other hand, tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Good men hold boundaries even when others complain. Good men act with integrity even when it costs them. Good men are kind, but not at their own expense. Their kindness comes from strength, not fear. This is why people admire strong men. They know strength makes kindness meaningful. Weak kindness collapses under pressure. Strong kindness stands firm. Now let's connect all the dots we've explored. Humans act emotionally. Loyalty must be earned, not assumed. Reputation must be crafted, not hoped for. Conflict is inevitable. not optional. Strength and goodness are allies, not opposites. And here's where everything comes together. This entire framework isn't about manipulation. It's about self-mastery. Machiavelli never told people to be immoral. He told them to be realistic, to see clearly, to understand how the world actually works instead of how they wish it worked. Once you accept the truth of human nature, you stop begging for loyalty. You stop arguing with emotionless facts. You stop oversharing. You stop chasing validation. You stop fearing confrontation. You stop giving energy to people who don't reciprocate. And for the first time, you become unmovable, confident, strategic, grounded, mature. You become a man who doesn't need to shout to be heard, doesn't need to fight to be respected, doesn't need to explain to justify himself. Your presence becomes the message. This is why Machiavelli said it is better to be feared than loved, because fear, in the deeper sense, means people respect your boundaries and value your presence. Love is fragile when separated from respect, but respect, when built correctly, can exist even without love. And now we come to the final truth, one that ties all of this together. The greatest danger is not being hated, it's being ignored. When people ignore you, your value disappears, your ideas vanish, your presence becomes invisible, your influence evaporates, your opportunities go to someone else. You don't need to be feared. You don't need to be loved, but you must never be ignored. And now, after everything we've covered, you're no longer the kind of man who blends into the background. You're no longer the kind of man who gets manipulated because you didn't understand the rules. You're no longer the man who gives loyalty to the wrong people, hides behind niceness, or avoids conflict, hoping life will get easier. You now understand the game everyone else is pretending they're not playing. You see the emotional patterns behind people's choices. You recognize the traps and the opportunities. You understand how to project presence, control your reputation, and protect your loyalty. You understand strength not as cruelty, but as clarity. And once you see the world like this, there's no going back. So, let me end with this. I probably shouldn't have taught you this, but here we are. If this opened your eyes, if anything clicked, shifted, or awakened something in you, then you're ready for the next level. Because we're just scratching the surface of real strategy. There's a deeper layer to all of this. The psychology of desire, approval, dependence, and influence. The principles that make people chase your validation instead of the other way around. If you're ready for that, then keep going. And whatever you do, never let the world ignore you again. Now that you see the truth, you face a simple choice. Continue living as the man shaped by the world, or become the man who shapes himself. Most people avoid conflict, chase approval, and hope life gets easier. But you're no longer blind to how things actually work. You understand emotion, reputation, loyalty, and power. Apply these principles quietly and consistently. Don't announce your growth, embody it. Strength is silent. Intention is loud. When you move with clarity, the world adjusts. This is the beginning of your shift into someone calm, strategic, and impossible to ignore. Use this knowledge with discipline, and remember, once your eyes open, they never close again.